So let's get right into this. I know it's already the second part of the day and everybody's tired. So hopefully it will be an engaging session for you guys. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to add them through the chat or raise your hand or anything like that. I would love people to interact with me. So yeah, let's get started. So just to repeat what we already heard, I'm Algirdas Milašius. I started my Agile journey around 2020 or 2021. I passed my professional Scrum Master 1 exam. I was a speaker in the last Agile for Vilnius. I passed a few more certificates. Currently, I work for Syncora, the leading pharmaceutical solutions organization centered on improving the lives of people and animals everywhere. I work as a business solution analyst in an automation team, and we have 400 colleagues in Lithuania and over 40,000 employees globally. You can check me out more on LinkedIn. So let's get started. What should we expect from this talk? A lot of open-ended questions and things that may or may not work specifically for you. If we are looking from a perfect presentation to the worst one, if I'm able to pass all my knowledge as a Scrum Master to you, that's the perfect outcome for me. If a few ideas stick with you, that's a more realistic one. If you get the feeling that this could have been an email, that's not that well. And if you're questioning why am I a speaker, that's the worst outcome that I could have imagined. So hopefully none of you feel that way. Also, don't forget to submit your feedback. I'll give you a few seconds to scan the QR code right now if you want. There will be another one at the end, and I think we will be able to share the link in the chat if you're in front of a PC. Right. So moving on, when are you a Scrum Master? Uh, and when I'm talking about Scrum Masters, I'm talking about it as a very loose and general term. I'm talking not just about Scrum, I'm talking about Kanban, I'm talking about extreme programming, KPIs, OKRs, anything related with Agile or not even fully Agile. Basically, I'm talking about the person who is organizing the team as a process and such people. So a few of the more absurd ones that I've heard is when the title says so, when you get a LinkedIn badge, when the team comes for help for you about the processes, uh, after you lead the first stand-up, when you pass your professional Scrum Master 1 exam, uh, when you ask what didn't go well in the retrospective, maybe that makes you a Scrum Master. And maybe you write an epic or a story. Is that even a Scrum Master's job? Who knows? So uh, I came to a conclusion that we need to define it so we are on the same page altogether. And I came to 6 points that I think you must do in order to be considered as a Scrum Master. So the first one is very basic, but you need to understand the framework and the principles and practices behind it. If you're doing Kanban, you need to understand how to visualize the work, how work in progress limits work, how to manage flow, and how to have a team working with continuous improvements. If you're doing Scrum, you need to understand the roles, values, artifacts, and events. And yeah, that's the basic principles of it. Then the second point, you need to facilitate the framework and events and coach people on them. You should be able to lead a daily stand-up without any problems, and you should be able to coach somebody to lead it in your absence or in a self-managed organization if there's a rotation or something like that. You should be able to explain the event and teach somebody else to take over. Then you also need to practice servant leadership and removing impediments. That means that you're helping people grow. You're helping them by not directly telling them what to do, but you're helping them do more things. Then, obviously, fourth point, promote a culture of continuous improvement. Uh, I've got a list of things here, and so some of them kind of feels like yearly goals here, but we're not talking about them. The three main ones are reflecting on practices, iterative progress, ownership of the process and the results and outcomes, and data-driven decisions. Uh, as for the fifth point, you need to be able to resolve conflicts and to collaborate with stakeholders, because that's part of your responsibility to make sure that everything goes smoothly. Your work should feel invisible when it's perfectly done. Everything should be smooth as butter, but if it's lacking, it's going to be very obvious where it's lacking. And the last point is that we foster empirical process, control, and learning. And what does it basically mean? It means that you don't make decisions based on feeling alone. You look at data, and the data helps you make a decision on what we should be doing next. Uh, for the rest of the presentation, we're going to follow liberating structures format, what, so what, now what. So if you would like to add a case that we would be exploring today, feel free to post in the chat. I'm going to explain a little bit more about what these formats are if you haven't heard. And yeah, then we will get into the exact scenarios that we're talking about. So what, so what, now what is a liberating structures way of doing things. On stage one, you describe what happened or what did you notice, what facts or observations stood out. So that is the data that you're working on. On stage two, you look for meaning, assumptions, conclusions, and beliefs. So what does it actually mean if something happened? So what? What does it mean for us? If we completed a story, what does that mean? And at stage three, we look at now what? Okay, we completed a story, that's a fact. So that means that we completed the work. Now what? Do we take another piece of work or we get feedback or what happens? We're also going to use a few techniques and we're going to use them in a loose format. We're going to use critical uncertainties. Basically, it's a graph of X and Y with different things. And it lets you map out where exactly you are on these uncertainties. It looks something like this. And we're going to use a form of wicked questions, which it comes down to this format. How is it that we are doing something and we are simultaneously doing something? So how can project A and project B be priority one at the same time? Sorry, 1 second. Right. So let's get into the first scenario. What? We don't keep track of any metrics. So what do you guys think? What does that mean for us? We have a lack of data-driven decisions because we don't have any data. So without data, we can't make data-driven decisions. We have an inability to measure progress. Okay, we did experiment one, we did experiment two, other things. Is it better? Are we going by feeling? Are we using story points to measure our progress? Does it mean anything to us? Then we have issue identification problems because we don't know if there's one person taking up too many things. We don't know if there's a bottleneck. Maybe we have 10 things that are waiting to be tested right now. We are also unable to demonstrate value. Okay, so we are working for 6 months. How much value are we delivering to the company? How many epics did we complete? Without metrics, we can't really tell. There's also a lack of accountability because everybody on the team was working. Everybody's doing their job. There's just no results. There's nothing that we can show off. So a few critical uncertainties which would be considered on the so what part are how do we ensure metrics guide the decisions rather than just collect dust? So people say that, oh, we don't keep track of metrics because we don't make any decisions on them. We did, we got a velocity of 8 and we do nothing with it. We completed 10 story points last week, or it took us 2 weeks to complete this project. We do nothing with those metrics. And how do we drive progress of, okay, where exactly are we on the line of do we count metrics and do we drive any decisions? Uh, Also, who and how are guaranteeing metrics are being accurate and unbiased can they even be? Because, for example, if a team gets information that, hey, your yearly bonus depends on how many stories you complete, everybody's just going to create small stories. So we shouldn't link them all together. And moving on from this, so now what? What can we do about it? We need to look at identifying key metrics. What matters to us exactly? Is it the velocity? Is it age of items? Is it something else? Then once we have that, sorry, once we identified what matters to us, we implement some sort of tracking. It can be something from Jira. It can be something that you collect on. It can be different things. Then obviously, uh, just gathering the data is not enough. We need to analyze and to learn from those metrics. And after we learn, if you're the Scrum Master or you're part of a team, you need to communicate what exactly does it mean to you? What does the data? If we were doing 8 stories last week and we're doing 15 today, is there a reason for that? We analyze the data. Now we need to talk about it. Maybe something happened. Maybe something didn't happen this week. We need to talk about it. And eventually, we also need to develop a strategy to report these metrics, well, some of the metrics to higher management, just in order to prove how much value we're delivering or to help us remove some blockers or uh, help us improve. Maybe we need somebody specialized in a specific technology to help us out. Maybe we just need more hands, and that's where improvement comes. Obviously, we can do a lot of things by improving our processes and trying to identify bottlenecks, but we can also ask for external help. We can identify these kind of things very easily when we can show the metrics that we are tracking. So a few wicked questions on metrics. If we are trying to be transparent and we want to openly share all our metrics of how the team is doing, so we are getting the help that we need, should everything be shared publicly? Should you go into the management meeting and say that, hey, that team member did 4 story points and that one did 8, so give him something more. So it's a tricky question because yes, we want to be very transparent and very open, but again, uh, there is team responsibility. So it's not an individual thing that we are reporting these metrics on. It's a team metric that we are reporting on how the team is doing, not an individual person inside the team. And another big question is how can we ensure metrics drive team conversations and decisions effectively? So if we are talking about something that, hey, if we went from 8 to 15 story points for this week that we have done, what changed? Let's look at what kind of work came in. Maybe we had somebody completely available all the time. Maybe there wasn't any multitasking or anything else. Try to look for reasons on what happened when you're comparing the different time periods or different metrics. Right. Any questions on this one? I see Dimitri posted something. Would you measure delivery or to have metrics for delivery when we even don't know if it was good enough? So that's an excellent question for this. Um, you will never have enough metrics and data. You should start uh, collecting them as soon as possible if you haven't done so far, and try to link them with value that you see. So obviously, keeping track of story points might not be valuable, but try looking at quality metrics at that point, because look at the value that you deliver. Look at how many users are using your delivered product or your delivered service. Who are you impacting? So it's not always about numbers. It can be qualitative as well, metrics. Uh, Feedback is always welcome to metrics, and talk with your stakeholders because they will definitely be able to tell you um, if they're using it or they're not using it. That's at least the starting metric that I would recommend always using, because if nobody's using your feature, you're not gonna see any other metrics on it. Right, let's go to the second topic. Our current ways of working are messy, and I want to enhance structure and efficiency in our teamwork. So what does it mean? Uh, that we need to understand the current process because it's unclear of what we're doing or how we're doing it. Maybe we learned it by heart by doing it, but there are inefficiencies and a lot of chaos because if we try to explain it, it's gonna be very hard or very tricky, or you're gonna say, "Oh, we just did it for this reason and not for anything else." So also either very complex process, you're doing a lot of steps, or it's an unclear process, which some may know things. Somebody from the team knows that we need to do a pull review, and somebody else from the team doesn't know that we need to do a pull review. So it becomes unclear of, do we always do it? Do we not do it? Is it necessary? When is it necessary? And so on. Uh, we're also having a problem with prioritizing valuable efforts that enhances alignment with success. So if our process is very messy, do we know when we're successful? It usually is a gray area for messy projects because if we delivered it on time, it's kind of a success, but we didn't do the documentation. So is it actually a success if we need to go back to that piece of work? Also, experimentation is key for ongoing improvements and insights in this case. So obviously, if you're working, you want to do experiments, but just because you did an experiment, you need to understand that an experiment doesn't necessarily need to keep going. Just because you did it once doesn't mean that it's going to always be like that. So this usually happens when a lot of experiments are attempted at a very short period of time, and uh, and they just stick with people. When people try too many changes at the same time, it becomes messy, or people are unclear of what they need to do. So a critical uncertainty, let's imagine that two-way graph. So one of them could be what process components lead to chaos or confusion. So we would have uh, chaos on the y-axis and confusion on the x. So if there's very much chaos at the top and very little chaos at the bottom, but on the x-axis, we would have confusion. So if it's chaotic and very confusing, that's terrible. Nobody wants to be there. So try to map out the things that you do for your own team and try to map out where exactly those things are. And I would recommend doing it at uh, as a separate, well, everybody doing it alone, basically, at first. And then you will see that it's very varying because for one person, creating an epic is very easy, but for another one, it's not that easy to do. Maybe they haven't created any epics. And another critical uncertainty that I have seen personally is that what kind of processes of your current ways of working are you doing for management? And which ones are you doing for your own team's benefit? Yes, there are things that are for compliance. You need to do certain things, but do you review what kind of reports you send out or what kind of meetings you have? Maybe you don't need that many meetings at all. So now what? We have a messy way of working. So what can we do about it? Uh, it actually comes down to three recommendations from my side. One is to streamline the process and consider chaotic areas and the reasons. One of the nice ways to do this is the snippet framework. Uh, when I say streamline the process, just go from we get a request to complete it and map out each step you need to take in order to go through all of that. It might take a little bit, and there might be a lot of branching out, but you try to map out the process to the best that you can and try to see which areas are very clear what you need to do. If somebody raises a request, you need to create an epic. That's kind of obvious. Okay, once you have an epic, what do you do next? You need to create some stories. Okay, how do you break out it into stories? Once you have that map, you can simplify the process. If a step doesn't bring any kind of value, why are you doing it? From liberating structures, there's minimal specs. It's a very easy way to do things. It shows which things you can take out and still have the same value that you bring. And the third point is to reflect on past experiments, learn from them, and plan the next experiment based on those insights. So if, for example, you go from doing Scrum for the last year into, let's say, okay, let's try Kanban. Uh, if you do it, if you do the transition, take a moment after some time, after a month or so, to look at what changed, what kind of impact it had on you. And obviously, do you have some metrics to go along with it? Right. So for wicked questions, um, if our current ways are messy, but people inside the team can work with them, how can we make the process more efficient and even explain it to outsiders? So everybody on the team can work with it and are doing their job, but at the same time, if somebody new comes along, it takes a long time for them to understand the process. So how can it be confusing and clear at the same time to people? Try to look into those kind of things. Right. I'm conscious of the time, and let's skip to the next scenario. This one is kind of obvious, but let's say you have a new job as an Agile Scrum Guru or Scrum Master or anything like that, and my objective is to build a successful team. So what does that mean? Uh, that you need to understand the current state of the team. Is it a new team, experienced team? Are you coming from the outside or internally from the company? Uh, are there any OKRs, KPIs, goals, or anything else? If not, then obviously you might need to set them, and who's going to help you define them. You also need to understand what kind of roles there are in the team. They might be unofficial as well. You also need to understand the responsibilities and the current processes and the future processes of the team. Um, Also, do you know how you can be successful and what does good or bad results mean to you, or what are great outcomes for the team? If you're unable to answer that, then you need to do a little bit of a deeper dive into the team and how they work and how do they measure outcomes. Also, you, what else does it mean to build a great team is to identify dependencies within and outside of the team. Uh, as much as we would like to, we can't really work in a silo. We will have dependencies to deploy into production. There might be some change management processes, or we are completely dependent on another team to do something, get approvals, access, or something like that. Uh, for critical uncertainties, again, don't want to spend too much time on this, but how well inside the team do the team understand Agile from not understanding Agile at all into being working with Agile for the last 10 years? Because there's a difference in how you're going to approach these different kind of people, and how dependent are people or are on the team. Is there a dependency on another team? Is there no dependencies or on other teams and anything in between? So for the now what, I came to 10 points, which kind of applies to those. What would you do in your first 90 days as a Scrum Master or as a manager, which are favorite interview questions. So the first step that you must do is assess the current state, then set clear team goals. You need to understand what you want to achieve in the next period of time. Then you need to define the process that you're going to follow with the team, and you have to get everybody to align with them, to empower and coach them into the correct processes. Then you need to foster a learning culture. So yes, we did implement Kanban, for example. Uh, that does not mean that it's a silver bullet. That doesn't mean that it's always going to work 100% for all the teams. We need to look and experiment. You need to also collaborate with stakeholders. That means you need to understand their definition of success for you and to share and align that ambition with them. You need to monitor and adapt your metrics. You need to share the knowledge. So just because you understand how the process works, you also need to make sure that everybody on the team is perfectly aligned and working towards the same goal. So do you keep in mind that you need to do reviews? Then we also need to build trust because without trust, there's not going to be much of a team spirit. And you need to celebrate achievements. You need to check out how far you went. It sometimes becomes hazy when you're doing the day-to-day things, but you need to celebrate. You need to take a minute and see how far you've been. Uh, as for wicked questions, how can we collectively define success for the team and its members? So you need to look at what does it mean to be successful for just one individual inside the team, and what does it mean to be to be successful for the whole team. Um, because if those two things don't align, then there's going to be conflicts, there's going to be a lot of competition, and we want cooperation instead of competition. Sometimes it can be a good thing, but you need to be able to manage that quite well. And then we also want to understand what strategies ensure buy-in from both management and the team for shared success. So if the manager says that we need to output 10 things in a sprint, is that the definition of success for the team? Is that something that we want to align? Maybe we need to show that instead of items that we output, we want to look at value that we deliver to the stakeholder actually. Right. How much time do I have just to check?
In 15 minutes.
Okay, so let me skip a little bit forward. Okay, so let's do this one quickly. And I'm facing resistance from the development team when introducing new agile practices. I'll let you read this through a little bit, but in short, you need to understand why there is resistance. Uh, how is the team involved, and is it directly involved in the changes and into the practices, or is it just a Scrum Master coming along and saying, "Okay, we're doing Scrum. That's it. No questions, no answers, no nothing." Are we openly communicating the changes? Is everybody informed? Is that one person from the team who was out of office on Friday when you did the introduction to this? Is he informed? Is he what kind of steps are you going to do to get everybody openly communicating about the changes that you're doing? There's also a thing that could potentially be impacting the team about change fatigue. From my personal experience, um, when I came to one of the teams, they were already doing changes and experiments almost weekly for a full year of how they can organize their process. And they were very fatigued about any changes and inconsistencies because one week they were doing that and the next week they're doing that. And basically, what I did for the first month was okay, let's stop with the experiments for now. Let's do an experiment. Let's stop the experiments. Let's just stick to what we're doing right now. And then let's gather some metrics and look how they're impacting us. And then let's do one experiment at a time. And obviously, there's always going to be communication gaps. Maybe somebody couldn't join that meeting or didn't read your email where you were explaining things, and it becomes a problem. So what can you do? Let's jump to the now what. We can schedule some one-on-one conversations, look at people that are raising concerns, and if they're unable to express themselves in that team meeting, schedule some one-on-one time. Try to talk with them, try to understand what is their main concern, and try to find ways how can your new agile practices help them improve on that. Uh, then to increase buy-in, experiment with involving team members in the decision-making process. Um, as a Scrum Master, it's not really your full only responsibility to make sure that everybody is following the process. It's your role to make sure that people are going for improvements and are improving the results. So they want if you get people involved in the process, it helps them take accountability and responsibility for things that they do. Also, a few things that I do recommend implementing is team temperature check-ins, um, or introducing a change champion if it's a bigger change that you're trying to do. If a whole department is switching from no agile to agile, you're definitely going to need a change champion who is driving the team towards that change. And the last recommendation is to create regular feedback loops. So if you're doing experiments, changes, and so on, you want to hear back from the team. You need to make sure that you're openly communicating and there are no communication gaps. For Vivekit questions, how can we turn resistance into valuable feedback? So again, if somebody is saying that no, they don't want to do it, or they're not really fully buying in, how can we also take it as valuable feedback? If somebody is saying no, 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 how can we make it a yes? Eventually, somebody is going to do it. Maybe you just need to find the right approach to do it. And also, what approaches can be used to build a sense of shared ownership for new practices? Because as a Scrum Master, you're leading the change, but you also want a shared responsibility for this. Any questions while I take a sip of water? Right, I don't see any questions. Let's go to the next one. Uh, the meeting I'm leading is not unfolding as I had initially intended or expected. It happens, but what does that mean? People are losing focus. It happens a lot on online meetings, especially when only one person is talking consistently, like me right now. People might be losing focus, and there's really no real indicators for me to know. We have limited communication, so people are not engaging or not collaborating on the decisions. Maybe they're uninterested in it, maybe something else. Maybe the meetings are going on random tangents, or somebody is venting their frustrations, or the meeting could be completely missing agendas, and maybe that meeting could have been an email. So for critical uncertainty, is there a specific reason only a few people are speaking up in the meeting? Try to check out how many people are actually participating from the invitees list. So if you invited 4 people, is it just one person doing a monologue? Well, that could have been an email, right, guys? Uh, Also, look at how much time was spent on something unrelated to the topic of the meeting. If you spent half a meeting deciding where to go to lunch, then obviously you didn't need that long of a meeting for the specific topic that you were talking about. So what can we do about it? The meeting should have an agenda, and I've included from the book Managing Humans by Michael Lopp uh, the must-have of how to run a meeting. So you must have an agenda of what you want to discuss in the meeting, and you have to have a referee or a moderator in the chat. Uh, then there's only really 2 types of meetings that you should be having. It's either to create something where you're creating or brainstorming or doing something with the team, or you're aligning that everything is in check. It's basically status reports or catch-ups or anything like that, but it's getting a question raised and getting an answer. Also, a few useful techniques. It's to pull them back. If somebody goes on a vent, okay, guys, let's come back to this topic. Afterwards, we can discuss your topic. Then resetting the silence. It's a very strong technique. It feels very awkward if you're not used to it. Just being completely silent for 10 seconds feels like an eternity, but it gets everybody to look at the screen, especially if they don't have cameras turned on. If everything goes silent, then, oh, what happened? Maybe the microphone went out, maybe my headphones died, maybe something, maybe the call ended by itself. It gets people's attentions, and if you need the attention, then you can get it. Then repeating the last important thing you said. the most important thing. It it lets you focus on what you actually wanted to say. Then the own it technique, it's a very easy one. But if you end up in a meeting and unfortunately they didn't follow the checklist, there's no agenda, no referee, step up and you can own it. If you feel like you're wasting time and you can't really leave a meeting, well, make the best out of your own time. Own the meeting. Uh, the next technique is summon the dictator. It's a troublesome technique which is hard to use, but if you're the owner of the meeting and you see that it went sideways completely, you can be the dictator. It's not rude to moderate your own call. It's encouraged to do it. You need to drive the agenda forward. If you're not doing it, nobody else is going to do. And the last two ones are improvisation and breaking the rules. Yes, there are rules and things that we need to do for meetings, but knowing them and when to break them is something that you just get to um, get to experience once you do them constantly. So going back to now what you need an agenda and a referee. Uh, when or if you lose focus of the meeting, you need to gently steer the conversations back to it. So you need to have a moderator, and it's not rude to say, hey guys, we came together to discuss this. If there's 10 more people in the meeting waiting for two people to hash it out, it's not rude to say, hey guys, stop that, pick it up outside the meeting, please. Encourage input from quieter participants. Just because a meeting doesn't work doesn't mean that people didn't have things to say or things that they wanted to input. So pivot into a different format. Maybe that meeting can be just a chat. Maybe it can be an email chain. Look what works for the attendees of that meeting. And use clear and shared agendas. If there's no agenda, you can sometimes decline the meeting until there's an agenda. Obviously, don't abuse this kind of suggestion because it's always easy to just send out a meeting and just to press decline, but you're not collaborating, you're not helping. If you talk with the organizer of a meeting that, hey, let's just drop 2 sentences of what we're going to talk about in this meeting, and let's see if it's actually worth to have that meeting. Right, so wicked questions. How can we keep discussions engaging and staying on track? So if we start talking about something, we don't want to ruin the flow, but at the same time, we want to keep on track. How can we do that? It's an open-ended question. It's tricky to define that, but you need to see where the golden balance of it is. The second wicked question is how can we address tangents without interrupting creative thinking? So sometimes tangents lead to great ideas from people, but we need to find again that golden ratio of, okay, we're going sideways from what we needed to do into, brainstorming. And the last one is how can we create an atmosphere where everybody feels comfortable sharing their thoughts and fears without drilling the meeting. If somebody goes on a personal vent, is it something that you wanted to align on? Is it something that is, an open space? If you interrupt a person going on their vent, will they still feel safe about sharing inside the meeting of other concerns that they have? If you interrupt somebody during a retro, will they want to continue their what they were saying? Right. I think we should be getting out of time, right?
Indeed.
Right. So let me skip to the recap. Sorry, guys. There will be a link to the slides. I've included a lot more than I was able to go through. I do recommend just reading or glimpsing through them. There are some ideas that are worth considering for you. So to recap, uh, what I was rambling about, there are 6 points. The first one is get good, practice, practice, practice. If you want to be efficient, you need to be able to use your skills. And the only way to get good at your skills is to constantly do them. Uh, then the second one is to make it simple, as clear as simple as possible, or completely automate the process. If you don't need to do it, then it can be a little bit more complex, but if nobody needs to do it, it's not really a problem. Then feedback, give and take. It is how we grow. And talk with people. Everybody is actually human in here and in your teams and inside the companies. Yes, there are a lot of things that are going to change with the AI. Some of them might be covered with bots and scripts, but even with ChatGPT, we can talk a little bit and we can communicate. Then the fifth point is to manage expectations. You're able to say no, call out early, and I would recommend always to under-promise and over-deliver. So if you remember one of the starting slides about expectations, I I don't know where I ended up for you, but leave some feedback. And then the last one is to change and evolve. If you don't like the process or the situation you're in right now, make it better and be the leader and lead the change. All right. Any questions, feedback, or anything else? Again, you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you scan this QR code, you can give feedback to me directly.